But listen, Dave Naylor's been on this all week. He's been at the forefront, as a matter of fact, of the reporting. And let's bring him in, TSN's CFL Insider. Hey, David, I appreciate the time, man, in a busy week, I'm sure. How you doing out there?
Not too bad, excited like everybody else that it feels like we might be coming to the end of the CFL's great drought and start talking football and remind myself who plays for who and who's coach. I mean, it's been so long since we've actually talked football that when I look at the rosters, I'm like, oh, yeah, I forgot that guy signed there.
Can you believe it's going to finally happen?
It would be fun to get into the...
David, finally going to happen.
I think, I feel very confident that it will for a few reasons. I mean, one is you look at all the signs, right? Even with what's happening in Ontario and the news this week about them looking for 35% of stadiums open by, the 2nd of July, 100% by the 23rd of July, news from other parts of Canada. And here's the other thing, and I heard you guys just off the top speculating about the votes, and we've done the same thing. It's like, this is not like, a federal election where you've got tens of millions of people voting and who knows how it's going to turn out. We got 9 votes here, right? And I don't know whether the league would schedule a vote if it didn't know it had the votes, right? Like, it's not like there's going to be a great mystery. I mean, I'm sure Randy Ambrosie is in, and I'm led to believe, is in constant communication with the governors. I mean, that is on an ongoing basis. So he knows where all of them stand. He knows what their concerns are. And I don't know for a fact that he wouldn't schedule a vote for Monday if he didn't have the votes. But I tend to think that there's a very strong likelihood that we're going to get a yes. And that's the feeling across the league. But I stopped short of guaranteeing it because, as we know, there's nothing for sure in a pandemic.
There's nothing for sure in life, Dave, but what are the chances that this is a vote to not kick off August 5th and push it back to Labor Day? What are the chances of that, do you think?
I think there's a chance of that. And I look, there are a lot of dynamics at play here. And some teams are more concerned with, how trying to cut their losses for this season as much as possible. And others just want to get on the field. I think there are some different perspectives. I mean, we've had teams that have come out like Ottawa and Hamilton have said, hey, if it's no fans in the stands, we'll still play. So, the fact that other teams have been a little bit sort of identified by their silence on that one, because, they could have joined the fray publicly, but they didn't. So I think that's a possibility. And we don't know what I think there's also the difficult part for the owners, I think, the governors, is going to be the leap of faith element to this. Okay. Because they're not going to have approval from the Public Health Agency of Canada by Monday to get the modified quarantine. They're not going to have signatures and guarantees about fans and stands. They're going to have to go with what, in some cases, senior bureaucrats are telling them, not necessarily the ministers. And, sort of the advice of people that they've learned to trust over this process. And I think if you look at, the way that amended CBA was written, what we know about it is there's a lot of flexibility in it for the owners, right? In terms of things like being able to add 2 playoff teams, right? And that's obviously flexible that, hey, what happens if we end up with, only an 8-game regular season or a 10-game regular season? And we want to say, well, we're going to have more of a playoff tournament, and that would give them 2 more television playoff dates, would presumably mean 2 more dates with good crowds. There's things that they can do depending on what goes on here. And I misreported the 35% yesterday, and it's complicated, and that's why I got it wrong. Somebody called me and clarified it last night that I said that they had to, initially I was under the impression you had to have at least 35% of a stadium open to hold a game there. And that's technically not quite correct. It is, the way it is you've got to have, that the league is guaranteeing the players at least a 10-season game where 35% of the stadiums for those dates are open. The league could still opt to play with fewer than 35% if they wanted, but the guarantee is if the stadiums are open, you'll get a guarantee of at least a 10-game season. Now, if we get a yes vote on Monday, as I expect we will, for a 14-game season starting.
And he's back. Kate Nails. We lost you right where you said, do you expect it'll be yes and to a 14-game schedule?
Yeah.
If you so go ahead.
Well, yeah. So I think that point's going to be moot, but you can just see that there's a lot of flexibility built in the owners here that they can do some things that would. It's going to be hard to say exactly what what we're coming out of, even if they get a yes vote on Monday, because there's going to be a lot of balls in the air. There's going to be a lot of things that are not guaranteed. And even though it's only going to be, I guess, what about from June 14th till we get to August 5th, you're talking about 6-7 weeks. I think they're just playing. They've given themselves flexibility that if unforeseen things happen, there's some ways that they can tilt things one direction or another to still have a season.
By the way, did you hear the great compliment from Arlen Bruce III on you? I'll say it again if you.
I did not. No,
he was watching and is watching. He says, Dave Naylor is definitely the best insider in CFL history. He has all the information on all high-profile players and coaches in the league. Great work, D, from Arlen Bruce. And the guys just put it up on the bottom of the screen there. So, yeah, let me ask you this.
Can I toss a compliment Arlen's way?
The floor is yours.
I would just say that, I wrote a story about 10 years ago where Arlen Bruce, on the record, criticized his coach in very, very stark terms, right? Bart Andrus. Things like that guy should go back to Europe and, like really harsh stuff. And I was and as you know, so many times when an athlete gets quoted, criticizing management or coach, the next day they deny it and they shoot the messenger, right? I was walking around TSN the next day and we said, Arlen Bruce must want to kill you, man. I can't believe you wrote that stuff. And then I said, no, we're good. Arlen Bruce is like the only athlete I've ever known that did that. And the next day didn't shoot the messenger and stood by what he said. I got traded a week later. but that wasn't a bad thing either.
Talk about guys that make the CFL great. Arlen Bruce is definitely one of those. Dave, just a fun question. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
I know of one team whose president is willing to play without the Toronto Argonauts. He's like, forget him, let's play. Because his staff told me. I'm not saying the team. But have you investigated that and just say, could we play without all 9 teams? That must have been discussed somewhere along the line.
Yeah, it has. And look, this is what I am kind of led to believe, is that if they got, let's say the vote was 8-1. And look, the one that you're allowed to vote no, but you might still play, right? You're allowed to express your opinion at the Board of Governors table, but then you could say, okay, we voted no, but we're going to go on and play. But if a team said, no, we're not prepared to play, I think, and this is just, I didn't get this from the commissioner. I don't have anything official on this. I think what would happen is the league would go forward and play and essentially dare that team to say, we're not playing. And I think that's what they would do. Now, if you get into 7-2 or 6-3, that may become a different equation because, as we know, a seven teams schedule would be a lot different than 8. We know we've seen an 8-team league before. We've never seen a 7-team league. So, the further you go down that vote, the harder that kind of thing would be to do. But I think if we do get an 8-1 vote, that I think that's what they would say. Okay, we're playing, and essentially dare that team to go public and say, yeah, we're not prepared to play, and our team and our players and our coaches, we're going to tell them all that we're sitting out this year. Let me just punctuate that by saying I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't either, but I was told that they can't. It's in the Constitution that they cannot play without every team.
See, this is the other thing that's come up in conversation I have with you. Yes, there is a Constitution, and I just moved a month ago, guys. So somewhere among my boxes here, I have a Constitution. I could dig through it and look for it. In my old house, I knew where it was. I don't know where it is right now. But I've also been told that kind of in these unprecedented times, the Constitution never anticipated, I don't think, a natural disaster that wiped out one season and a quarter of another. So I'm not sure whether practical realities might supersede the Constitution in this circumstance, and I'm kind of led to believe they might.
There are questions coming in, some of them that I think I can handle. For the ones that I can't, I'm going to put to you, Dave, from
Sure.
Nelson Hacker, which says the vote have to be majority or unanimous. Do we know? Just to clarify that, what if it's the Argos and Als? It's 2 that say no. Do they have enough stroke, even though it's the tiny minority, to keep them off the field?
I don't know. Like, I think that the idea would be, let's say you got a 7-2 vote, I think the other teams would say, okay, 7-2, we're playing. You're coming with us. If both teams said, we're not prepared to play. Look, these are questions that I have been asking for a while, and to which I am told there are no answers. Like, there are no definite answers. There are certainly, considerations, But what would actually happen if we got into a situation like that, and what actual vote you need in this case? Like I said, there's what the Constitution says, and there's the practicality of the matter. And I think the practicality of the matter is going to supersede. And that you're talking about human beings. So I couldn't predict exactly how that would go or what you actually have to play. But I think 8 would be easy. I think 7 would be tough.
Last one, I think we have 2 minutes here from Jack in Alberta. He says, Dave, are all players going to have to quarantine for the duration of the season when it starts?
Not quarantine, but they're going to be under protocol. And similar to what the NHL players have been on all season. And I guess what's a bit surprising to that is that the return to play protocol for players has no provision for vaccines. Nothing. Right now, at least the way it's written. I think that could change between now and August 5th. And you can understand why you have some players saying, hey, wait a minute, I've got both vaccines. And you're telling me I'm going to be under exactly the same restrictions as someone who's chosen to get none? Like if we have a road trip in another city, I got to get on the bus after the game and go back to my hotel room and I can't go out, can't do anything, even in a place that's wide open. That is the case right now. But as I mentioned, we are 6 or 7 weeks away, from the opening of the season. I think as the numbers drop and the vaccinations increase and the regions of the country open up, that could change. And there may be some use of vaccines, who's vaccinated, who's not, perhaps, to allow players more freedom. But as it is right now, as it's written, there are no provisions at all regarding vaccine.
Absolutely. Great answer. And it's all the same stuff that I've seen. If you're fully vaccinated, you got no problems. But it's a very small percentage of the players as it stands right now. David, thanks for the update, man. I appreciate all the great work, and thanks for coming on today.
Hey, my pleasure. And we're all looking forward to Monday by Tuesday.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. No kidding. Dave Naylor, we've enjoyed his stuff, obviously, on TSN Sports Center almost every night.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.